People still ask why I moved out of that apartment so suddenly. I usually give them a simple answer. I say the building was old, that the neighbors were loud, that the place was freezing in winter. People accept explanations like that. Old apartments are uncomfortable. Old buildings have problems. But that isn't the truth. The truth is I left because something inside that apartment knew my name, and because an old woman downstairs warned me not to answer when it called. It started in the fall. I had just taken an office job in a small town. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady, and I needed something cheap. Most apartments were way out of my budget. Rooms disappeared almost as soon as they were posted. Then I found an ad for a one-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood. The rent was almost half the price of everything else. The photos looked bad but not impossible. Old walls, a tiny kitchen, a narrow bedroom, a shared courtyard. I called immediately. The landlord told me I could see it that afternoon. The moment I arrived, I almost turned around. The building was a 2-story wooden apartment house that looked like it had been waiting decades to collapse. The paint had peeled away in long strips. The porch leaned slightly to one side. Several steps had been replaced with mismatched boards. No two windows looked the same. Some were newer. Others were so old, the glass looked cloudy from the street. The whole place felt tired, like it had been patched over too many times and had finally given up. There was an empty swing set in the courtyard. It moved slightly in the wind. The landlord was waiting by the entrance. He was around 50, quiet, polite. He barely smiled. Inside, the stairwell smelled like damp wood. Every step creaked under us. At one point, I had the strange feeling that someone was walking upstairs at the exact same pace. I stopped and looked behind me. No one was there. Old building, the landlord said. Everything makes noise. The apartment itself was cleaner than I expected. Not cozy, just clean. The floors had been washed. The windows were spotless. But the furniture looked ancient. A heavy wooden table, a faded couch, and a tall wardrobe in the bedroom. It was dark wood, almost black, with carved doors and old brass handles. It didn't match anything else in the apartment. It looked like it had been brought there from another house, maybe another century. I noticed it immediately. The landlord did too. "You don't really need to use that," he said. I looked at him. "Why not?" He shrugged. "The doors stick." That was all he said. I signed the lease. 3 days later, I moved in. That first evening, while I was unpacking, I noticed an old woman sitting outside. She wore a dark scarf and a long black skirt. Both hands rested on a cane. She sat on a bench near the first floor windows and stared across the courtyard. She just watched. I stood by my window longer than I meant to. Then she slowly lifted her head and looked directly at me. Not at the building, not at the second floor. At me. I stepped away from the window. For the first few days, nothing happened. I went to work, came home, made dinner, watched television, went to bed. If someone had asked whether I liked the apartment, I probably would have said yes. It was old, but livable. Then I began noticing how quiet the building became after 9 at night. No televisions through the walls, no music, no people in the hallway, no doors opening. It was like everyone in the building disappeared at the same time. One morning I met the woman who lived across from me. She was around my age and seemed friendly. We walked downstairs together. The old woman was outside again. Same bench, same dark clothes, same expression. "Does she sit there every day?" I asked. My neighbor's smile vanished. Almost. Does she live downstairs? Yes. For how long? My neighbor looked at the old woman, then back at me. Don't ask about her. Why? She shook her head. Just don't. Then she walked away. After that, I started paying more attention. Sometimes the old woman sat outside, but most of the time I saw her through her window. She always seemed to be looking at the same place, an old tree near the edge of the courtyard. Nothing was there, just dead leaves and bare dirt. But every time I walked past that tree, she would look at me first, then slowly turn her eyes back to it. A few nights later, I woke to the sound of a floorboard creaking. I opened my eyes. The room was dark. Another creak followed. Closer this time. I turned on the lamp. The bedroom was empty. The wardrobe stood against the wall, closed, still. I checked the hallway, the kitchen, the bathroom. Nothing. The next 2 nights were quiet. Then it happened again. This time, the sound came from just outside my bedroom door. One slow step, then another. I reached for the light. The moment the room lit up, the footsteps stopped. The front door was locked. Both windows were closed. I sat awake until morning. A few days later, I finally convinced myself it was just a building settling. Then one night, at exactly 2:50 a.m., I heard someone climbing the stairs outside my apartment. Slowly, one step at a time. The footsteps stopped directly in front of my door. I didn't move. For almost a full minute, the hallway remained completely silent. Then something scraped across wood, but not the front door. The sound came from inside my bedroom, from the wardrobe. I stayed in bed staring into the darkness. The scraping continued, slow, patient, like someone inside was dragging a fingernail across the door. The next morning, I called the landlord. He came over, checked the locks, looked at the windows, and opened the wardrobe. Inside were a few old blankets, empty boxes, and nothing else. He closed it again. Old wood, he said. Houses like this make strange sounds. Then he placed one hand on the wardrobe door. He was quiet for a moment, and said, "If it starts creaking at night, don't open it." I stared at him. Why? He pulled his hand away. Some things are better left closed. He left a few minutes later. The next evening, there was a police car outside. My neighbor was missing. Her phone was still inside her apartment. So were her purse, her keys, and her coat. There were no signs of a struggle, no open windows, no blood, nothing. She had simply vanished. While the police searched her apartment, I overheard 2 men whispering in the courtyard. That makes 3. Shut up. I stepped closer. 3 what? They both looked at me. One of them turned away. The other said, "Stay out of it." Then they left. After that, the old woman stopped sitting outside. She stayed by her window, watching me. One evening, she raised one hand and motioned for me to come closer. I walked across the courtyard. Her window was cracked open. The room behind her was dark. She studied my face for a long time. Then she leaned toward the glass and whispered, "If you hear someone call your name tonight, don't answer." I felt my stomach tighten. She continued, "No matter whose voice it uses." Then she shut the window. That night at 3 in the morning, I woke to a soft female voice in the hallway. It said my name. Once, then again, closer. And the worst part was, I recognized it. Then I remembered the old woman's warning. If you hear your name, don't answer. I stayed completely still. The voice came again, soft, patient, almost comforting. Then I heard footsteps. One slow step, a pause, another step, closer, closer. They stopped outside my bedroom. Silence filled the apartment. Then I heard something scratching wood, very slowly. I turned my head toward the wardrobe. The sound was coming from inside it. Scratch, pause, scratch, pause. Every hair on my body stood up. Then, the wardrobe door moved. Only an inch. Just enough to leave a thin black crack. I couldn't breathe. The gap widened a little more. A cold smell drifted into the room. Wet earth, like freshly dug soil after rain. Then a woman's voice came from inside. Not the same voice that had called my name. This one was weak, almost pleading. Please, open it. I didn't move. I sat there until sunrise. When daylight finally reached the room, the wardrobe door was closed again, as if nothing had happened. But there was a narrow line of damp dirt on the floor beneath it. That was enough. I decided to leave. I didn't care about the lease anymore. I started packing immediately. By evening, every box was stacked beside the front door. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, heavy. I looked through the peephole. The old woman stood outside my apartment. She didn't knock. She simply whispered through the door, "Hang it on the wardrobe." Then she walked away. I opened the door. She was already gone. But something was hanging from my doorknob. A small bronze medallion on a black cord. It felt strangely heavy. Ancient symbols had been carved into one side. The other side was too worn to recognize. I almost threw it away. Instead, I left it on the table near the entrance. By then, it was too late to find another place to stay. I told myself I only had to survive one more night. Around 2:30, the rain stopped. The wind disappeared. The entire building became silent. Then, bang! A heavy impact echoed from the bedroom. Another, stronger this time. The dishes inside the cabinet rattled. I grabbed the medallion, walked toward the bedroom, and froze. Something hit the wardrobe from the inside, hard enough to shake the entire room. Then I heard my mother's voice. "Emily." My blood turned to ice. "Please, help me." It was perfect. Every word, every breath, every tiny crack in her voice. For one terrible second, I believed it. The wardrobe door slowly opened. A pale hand appeared in the gap. Long fingers. Black fingernails. Then I remembered the old woman's warning. I rushed forward and looped the cord around both wardrobe handles. The moment the medallion touched the wood, something screamed. The voice changed instantly. No longer my mother's. It became something raw, animal, filled with hatred. The wardrobe exploded with violent pounding. The doors slammed again and again. The handles twisted. The wood groaned, but they wouldn't open. The medallion held them shut. Then a face appeared between the doors. Gray skin pulled tight across the bones. Wet strands of black hair clung to its face. Its eyes were far too wide. A dark bruise circled its neck. It smiled. Then, it spoke with my mother's voice again. "Take it off." I backed away. "It hurts." I didn't answer. The face changed. For a moment, it looked young, almost beautiful. Then the skin twisted again. Its smile became impossibly wide. "She lied to you," it whispered. "The old witch trapped me." Another violent crash shook the wardrobe. Set me free. I kept backing toward the wall. "I'll leave, I promise." Then it stopped begging. It began screaming, cursing me, laughing, crying. Every few seconds its voice changed. Sometimes it sounded like my mother. Sometimes like my missing neighbor. Sometimes like the old woman downstairs. Take it off. I made a mistake. Please. The voices blended together until I couldn't tell who was speaking anymore. The wardrobe kept shaking for hours. The screws holding the hinges slowly began pulling out of the wood. I thought the doors were going to burst open, but every time the medallion struck the handles, everything stopped, just for a second. Then it started again, the screaming, the pounding, the scratching. It lasted until sunrise. As the first light entered the room, everything went silent, completely silent. I walked toward the wardrobe. The doors were closed. The medallion hung exactly where I had left it, but fresh scratches covered the wood. And beneath the doors, there was another thin line of damp earth. I grabbed my bag, left every piece of furniture behind, and ran. Outside, several neighbors stood in the courtyard. All of them were staring at the first floor window. The old woman had died during the night. She was found sitting in her chair, facing the old tree she had watched every day. Later, I searched the town archives. Her name was Anna. Decades earlier, her 19-year-old daughter had taken her own life. She was found hanging from the same tree in the courtyard. After that, people began hearing a woman's voice at night. Then the disappearances started. Everyone blamed Anna. For years, everyone believed Anna was the evil in that building. I think she was the only thing keeping it locked inside. I've never gone back to that town. Sometimes I wonder if the building is still standing. If someone else rented that apartment because the price seemed too good to pass up. If someone lives there now. I hope they never open that wardrobe. And if they ever hear their name in the middle of the night, I hope they're smart enough not to answer. If you've made it this far, you're ready for the next story. It's already waiting on the channel.